February 26, 1900, Volume 3. The Divine Will is the Beatitude of All. After going through several days of privation, at most he would come sometimes like a shadow and would run away, I felt such pain that I consumed myself with tears. Having compassion for my sorrow, blessed Jesus came, and he looked and looked at me again. Then he said to me, "My daughter, do not fear, for I do not leave you. However, when you are without my presence, I do not want you to lose heart, but rather, from today on, when you are deprived of me, I want you to take my will and to delight in it, loving me and glorifying me in my will, and holding my will as if it were my very person. By doing so, you will keep me in your very hands." What forms the beatitude of paradise? Certainly my divinity. Now, what would form the beatitude of my dear ones on earth? With certainty, my will. My will can never escape you. You always have it in your possession, and if you remain in the circle of my will, there you will experience the joys most ineffable and the pleasures most pure. By never going out of the circle of my will, the soul becomes noble, divinized, and all of her operations reverberate in the center of the divine sun, just as the sun's rays reverberate on the surface of the earth. Not one of them goes out of their center, which is God. The soul who does my will is alone the noble queen who nourishes herself from my breath, because she takes her food and her drinks from no place but my will, and by nourishing herself from my will all holy, a most pure blood will flow in her veins, and her breath will spread a fragrant perfume, which will cheer the whole of me, because it is produced by my very breath. Therefore I want nothing else from you but that you form your beatitude in the circle of my will, without ever going out of it, not even for a brief instant." While he was saying this, I felt an alarm and a fear in my interior that the speaking of Jesus might indicate that he was not going to come, and that I was to find peace in his will. Oh God, what a mortal pain! What grips in my heart! But Jesus, always benign, added, "How can I leave you since you are victim? When you cease to be victim, only then will I not come. But as long as you are victim, I will feel always drawn to come." So it seems I have remained at peace, but I feel as though surrounded by the adorable will of God in such a way that I find no opening through which to go out. I hope he will always keep me in this circle that connects me completely in God. February 26, 1910, Volume 9. Before dying, the soul must make everything die in the divine will and in love. My usual state of privation continues, and perhaps it is even worse. Oh God, what a descent I have made! I could never imagine I would reach such an end. But at least I hope I will never, never go out of the circle of his most holy will. This is everything for me. I would like to cry over my heart-rending state, and sometimes I do. But Jesus reproaches me, telling me, "You want to be always a little girl. It shows that I am dealing with a little girl. I cannot trust you. I was hoping to find in you the heroism of sacrifice for me, but instead I find the tears of a little girl who wants no sacrifice. And so if I cry, he shows himself harder, and he does one of his bravados by not coming at all for that day. Therefore I have to pluck up courage to keep crying away from me, and I say to Jesus, "You say that you deprive me of yourself out of love, and for love of you I accept your privation. For love of you I will not cry." And if I manage it, he shows himself a little bit more indulgent. Otherwise he penalizes me more with his privation, dying continuously, though living. Then after spending a day like this, as much as I tried, I could not hold back my tears. Jesus made me pay for it as I deserved, but late at night, having compassion for me, as if just a window of light had opened in my mind, he made himself seen and told me, "Don't you want to understand that before dying you must die to everything, to suffering, to desires, to favors, to everything, and that everything must die in my will and in my love? That which enters eternity in heaven is my will and love. All other virtues end: patience, obedience, suffering, desires. Only my will and love never end. Therefore you must die in advance in my will and in love. This is for all of my saints, and I myself did not want to spare myself being abandoned by the Father, so as to die completely in the will and in the love of the Father. Oh, how I would have wanted to suffer more! Oh, how much more did I yearn to do for souls! But all this died in the will and love of the Father, and so also have the souls done who have really loved me. And you don't want to understand this. February 26, 1912, Volume 11. The creature is a complex of love and moves only for love. Jesus, beggar of love. Returning, my all and always adorable Jesus told me, "My daughter, I am love, and I made the creatures all love. The nerves, the bones, and the flesh are fabrics of love, and after I wove them with love, I made flow the blood in all their tiny particles, so as to cover them with a garment, in order to give them the life of love. Therefore the creature is nothing other than a complex of love, and she does not move other than for love. At the most there can be varieties of love, but it is always for love that she moves. There can be divine love, love of self, love of creature, evil love, but always love. Neither can she do otherwise, since her life is love, created by the eternal love, and therefore led to love by an irresistible force. So after all, even in evil, in sin, for the creature there must be a love which has pushed her to do that evil. Ah, my daughter, what is not my pain in seeing in the creatures the property of my love which I delivered, being profaned and contaminated by a different use? In order to guard this love which came out of me and which I gave to the creature, I remain around her like a poor beggar, and as the creature moves, palpitates, breathes, works, speaks, and walks, I go begging everything from her, and I beg her, I implore her, I beseech her to give everything to me, saying, Daughter, I ask from you nothing other than what I gave you. It is for your own good. Do not steal from me what is mine. The breath is mine. Breathe only for me. The heartbeat and the movement are mine. Palpitate and move only for me. And so on for all the rest. But with greatest pain I am forced to see the heartbeat taking one way, the breath another, and I, poor beggar, remain with an empty stomach, while the love of self, of the creatures, and even of the passions, remains stuffed. Can there be a greater wrong than this? My daughter, I want to pour out my love and my pain with you. Only one who loves me can have compassion for me. February 26, 1922, Volume 14, How Jesus Covered Us with Beauty in Redemption. I was thinking about the great good that Jesus has done to us by redeeming us, and he, all goodness, told me, My daughter, I created the creature beautiful, noble, with eternal and divine origin, full of happiness and worthy of me. Sin ruined him from top to bottom. It made him decay from his nobility. It deformed him, and rendered him the most unhappy creature, unable to grow, because sin stopped his growth and covered him with wounds, such as to be repugnant to the mere sight. Now my redemption ransomed the creature from sin, and my humanity acted just like a tender mother with her newborn baby. Since there is no other food with which she can give life to her baby, she opens her breast and attaches her baby to it, and from her own blood, converted into milk, she administers to him the nourishment to give him life. More than mother, my humanity made many holes be opened in itself by blows of lash, which almost like many breasts sent out rivers of blood, so that my children, by attaching themselves to them, might suckle the food to receive life and develop their growth. With my wounds I covered their deformities, rendering them more beautiful than before. And if in creating them I made them like clearest and noble heavens, in redemption I adorned them, studding them with the most refulgent stars of my wounds, so as to cover their ugliness and make them more beautiful. To their wounds and deformities I attached the diamonds, the pearls, the jewels of my pains, in order to hide all their evils and clothe them with such magnificence as to surpass their state of origin. Therefore it is with reason that the Church says, Fortunate fall, because with sin came redemption, and my humanity did not only nourish them with its own blood, but clothed them with its own person, and adorned them with its own beauty. But now my breasts are always full to feed my children. What will not be the condemnation for those who do not want to attach themselves to them, to receive life, to grow, and to have their deformities covered? February 26, 1927, Volume 21. Wherever the divine will reigns, it forms 3 little cords of most pure gold. How the divine will makes its exposition in the whole creation. My lovable Jesus makes me struggle very much for his return. Oh, how my little soul longs for him, reduced without him to be like earth without water and without sun, such that while I burn with thirst, the darkness is so great that I do not know where to move my step in order to find him, who alone can give me the water that quenches my thirst, and who makes the sun rise for me, that gives light to my steps, to find he who moves away from me. Ah, Jesus, Jesus, come back! Don't you feel my heartbeat in yours that calls you? and having no more vital humor, palpitates with difficulty and has no more strength to call you? But while I was saying this and other things, my highest good, Jesus, moved in my interior and showed 3 little cords that, tied together, all 3 of them, were tied in the depth of my soul. These cords were descending from heaven and were linked to 3 bells. Jesus was a little child, and with a grace that cannot be described, and all in a haste, he took the little cords in his tiny little hands and pulled them strongly, but so much that it seemed that those bells formed a peal so loud in heaven that the whole of heaven would come out to see who it was that was sounding with such haste and might as to call the attention of all of heaven. I too remained stupefied, and my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, the soul in whom my will reigns has little cords of most pure gold that descend from the power of the Father, from the wisdom of me, the Son, from the love of the Holy Spirit. As she operates, loves, prays, suffers, I take the little cords in my hands, and I put our power, wisdom, and love in motion for the good and the glory of all the blessed and of all creatures. The sound of these bells is so loud and harmonious as to call everyone, like a sound of invitation to celebrate. This is why all came out to enjoy the feast of your act. So as you see, the acts of the soul in whom my will reigns are formed in heaven, in the womb of her Creator. They descend upon earth through the 3 cords of our power, wisdom, and love, and ascend again to their source, to bring back the glory due to us. And I delight very much in pulling these cords, so as to make everyone hear the sound of these mysterious bells." Then, after this, having heard of the exposition of the most holy sacrament that was done in the church, I thought to myself, "For me there are neither expositions nor services." And my sweet Jesus, giving me no time to think about anything else, came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, for you there is no need of exposition, because one who does my will has the greater and more continuous exposition that my will displays in the whole creation. Even more, since each created thing is animated by it, it forms innumerable expositions for as many things as exist. Who forms my divine life in the Eucharist? My will. If the sacramental host were not animated by my supreme will, the divine life would not exist in it. It would be a simple white host that would not deserve the adoration of the faithful. Now, my daughter, my will makes its exposition in the Son, and just as my will has the veils of the host that conceal my life, so does it have the veils of the light that conceal it in the Son. Yet, who makes a genuflection? Who sends a kiss of adoration? Who says a thank you to my will exposed in the Son? No one. What ingratitude! And yet in spite of this it does not stop. It is always stable in doing good. Within its veils of light, it follows the steps of man. It invests his actions. Whatever path he may take, its light makes itself found in front of him and behind him, carrying him as though in triumph within its womb of light, in order to do good to him, disposed to do good to him and to give him light even if he did not want it. O will of mine, how invincible, lovable, admirable you are, immutable in good, untiring, without ever drawing back. See the great difference between the exposition of the Eucharist and what my will itself makes, in a continuous act, in created things. In that of the Eucharist, man must put himself out. He has to go himself, draw near it, and dispose himself to receive the good. Otherwise he receives nothing. On the other hand, in the exposition of my will in created things, it is my will that goes to man, that puts itself out, and even if he is not disposed, my will gives in abundance and drowns him with its goods. Yet there is no one who adores my eternal will in its many expositions. It makes its exposition in the sea, and while in the sun, symbol of the Eucharist, it gives its light, its heat, it gives innumerable goods, but always in silence. It never says a word. It never gives a reproach, no matter how many horrendous evils it may see. In the sea instead, in the veils of the water, it makes its exposition in a different way. It seems to speak while forming its murmuring within the veils of the water. It strikes fear in its tumultuous billows and in the roaring waves, such that if it invests ships and people, it buries them in the depth of the sea, and no one can resist it. My will in the sea makes the exposition of its power and speaks in the murmuring. It speaks in the billows. It speaks in the gigantic waves, calling man to love it and to fear it. And in seeing itself not listened to, it makes the exposition of divine justice, and changing those veils into storm, it hurls itself at man inexorably. Oh, if creatures paid attention to all the expositions that my will makes in the whole creation, they should remain always in act of adoration, to adore my will exposed in the flowery fields, in which it spreads its fragrances, in the trees loaded with fruits, in which it spreads the variety of its sweetnesses. There is not one created thing in which it does not make its divine and special exposition. And since creatures do not pay to it the due honors, it is your task to maintain the perpetual adoration of the expositions that the supreme Fiat makes in the whole creation. You, my daughter, are she who offers herself as the perpetual adorer of this will, with no adorer and no requital of love on the part of creatures. February 26, 1930, Volume 28, How It Is Necessary to Desire a Good. If a people is not formed for the divine will, it cannot have its kingdom. How one who lives in the Fiat is master, while one who does his own will is servant. I was thinking about the great interest that my always lovable Jesus has in making his holy will known, and was saying to myself, he loves, he longs for, he wants his kingdom to come, and then he delays so much in making it arise in the midst of creatures. If he wanted to, he can do anything. Power he does not lack. In one moment he can overwhelm heaven and earth. Who can resist his power? No one. More so since, in Jesus, wanting and being able to are all the same. Why then is he still delaying? But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, moving and making himself heard in my interior, told me, my daughter, longing for, desiring, and wanting a good is to dispose oneself to receive it. And when one receives a good that has been greatly longed for, one loves it, appreciates it, keeps it safe, holds it as the welcome one and the bearer of the longed-for good. Not only this, but this is another excess of our love. We make the creature long for the good that we want to give, because we want her to place something of her own, at least, her sighs, her prayers, her will of wanting that good, so as to be able to say to her, see, you have deserved it, because on your part you have done what you could in order to obtain it, and we, with all our heart, give it to you, while it is all the effect of our goodness. And this is the reason why, first, we make known what we want to give to creatures. It can be said that we place ourselves in correspondence, sending our letters of notice. We dispatch our messengers, making them say what we want to give, and all this in order to dispose them, to make them long for the great gift we want to give. Did we not do the same for the kingdom of redemption? There were 4,000 years of waiting, and the closer the time would get, the more pressing were the notices. the more frequent the letters, and everything in order to dispose them. So it is for the kingdom of my divine will. I delay because I want them to know this, to pray, to long for it to come to reign, to comprehend the great gift of it, so as to be able to say to them, "You have wanted it, you have deserved it, and my will is now coming to reign in your midst." By knowing it, praying it, longing for it, you have formed its chosen people in which it might dominate and reign. Without a people, a kingdom cannot be formed, and this is the other reason for making known that my divine will wants to reign upon earth, that they may pray, they may long for it, they may dispose themselves to form its people in whose midst it can descend and form its royal palace, its dwelling, its throne. Therefore, do not be surprised if, while you see so much interest on my part, wanting my will to reign, then you see that it delays. These are the dispositions of our unreachable wisdom that disposes everything with order, and the delay serves to place its knowledges on the way that will act as letters, as telegraphs, as telephone, as messengers, to form the people for my divine will. Therefore pray, and let your flight in it be continuous. After this I continued my round in the divine Fiat, and as I arrived at Eden, I paused in thinking of the reciprocal love between God and Adam innocent, and how the divinity, finding no hindrance on the part of man, poured itself in torrents upon him, enraptured him to itself with its love by sweet attractions, making him hear its voice, all tenderness, saying to him, "Son, I love you very much." And Adam, wounded and enraptured by the eternal love, repeated his refrain, I love you, and flinging himself into the arms of his Creator, he would cling to him so tightly as to be unable to detach himself as to the only love he knew, and living only to love him. But while my mind was wandering in this reciprocal love of God and of the creature, my sweet Jesus, all goodness, told me, "My daughter, what a sweet memory is the creation of man." He was happy, and we too felt the fruit of the happiness of our work. We felt such pleasure in loving him and in being loved back. Our divine will preserved him for us fresh and beautiful, and carrying him in its arms of light, it let us contemplate how beautiful was the work created by us, our dear Son. And as our Son, we kept him in our house, amidst our endless goods, and, as a consequence, as our Son, he acted as master. It would have been against the nature of our love not letting the one whom we loved so much, and who so much loved us, act as master. In true love there is no mine and yours, but everything is in common. And besides, letting him act as master caused no harm to us. On the contrary, it gladdened us, it made us smile, it amused us, it gave us the beautiful surprise of our own goods. And then how could he not be master if he possessed our divine will that lords over everything and dominates everything? In order not to make him master, we would have had to place our divine will in servitude. That could not be. Wherever it reigns, there are no servitudes, but everything is mastership. And therefore, for as long as man lived in our Fiat, he knew no servitude. As he sinned, withdrawing from our divine volition, he lost the mastership and reduced himself to servitude. What a change! From son to servant. He lost the command over created things. He became the servant of everything. By withdrawing from our divine Fiat, he felt shaken from his very foundations, and he felt his very person vacillating. He experienced what weakness is, and felt himself the servant of passions that made him feel ashamed of himself, and he reached the point of losing the dominion of himself. So strength, light, grace, peace were no longer in his power as before, but he had to beg for them with tears and prayers from his Creator. Do you see then what living in my divine will means? To be master. A servant is one who does his own will. And I, surprised by the speaking of Jesus, told him, "My love, for as much as it is consoling to hear you speak about your divine will, so it is sorrowful to hear about the evils of the human will." And Jesus added, "My daughter, if it is necessary to speak to you about my divine fiat, that will serve as invitation, attractions, voices, tender, sweet, and strong, to call everyone to live in the royal palace of my divine will, that they may no longer be servants, but masters. So it is necessary to speak to you of the evils of the human will. In fact, I will never take free willing away from man. Therefore it is necessary that in the kingdom of my divine will I have the mounting of guards, the noble sentries, that may keep the creature on their guard, making known to them the great evil of the human will, so that they may stand at attention, and abhorring it, they may love the happiness and the mastership that my divine will gives them." February 26, 1937, Volume 34. What one additional act that the creature does in the divine will is. It is harmony, music. It is the overwhelming of heaven and earth. It is the installation that she forms in God, and God in her. I felt my little and poor soul surrounded by the divine will, inside and outside of me, to the right and to the left. It flows even under my feet. Everywhere it runs in order to tell me, "It is I who forms your life, who warms you with my heat, who forms your motion, your breath. Recognize me, because your life is animated by mine, and I will do things worthy of me in you." But while my mind lost itself in the fiat, my sweet Jesus, making me his brief little visit, as if he felt a need of love to speak to me about his volition, told me, "My little daughter of my volition, my love repressed in me feels the need of pouring itself out. Otherwise it gives me such deliriums that I feel myself suffocated by my own flames. Therefore my speaking is an outpouring of love. It is a relief to my heart, and in order to refresh myself, I go finding who wants to listen to me. Now listen to where my love reaches, and the great prodigy of the operating life of my will in the creature. One additional act that the creature does in my will is one more harmony that she casts between heaven and earth. It is one new celestial music that she forms for her Creator, who likes it so much, more so because it comes from the earth, because the things of heaven are all ours. No one can say in the celestial fatherland that he gives to us, but we are the ones who give to them, who felicitate and beatify everyone. On the other hand, the soul on earth can say, "I give to my Creator," and feeling ourselves enraptured, we give our will anew as operating life in her, so that it forms for us other new and more beautiful music. How beautiful it is to hear our heaven on earth, to hear new celestial music that comes from the wayfaring soul. All heaven makes a new feast, and we feel that also the earth is ours, and we love it more. In every additional act that she does in my divine will is an overwhelming of heavens and earth, because everyone, angels, saints, run in that act, even creation itself, in order to take their place of honor in the operating act of my will. No one wants to remain outside of the act of my divine fiat, the true centralization of everything, and everyone happens. Nor would my will be able to do less than to keep in its act all those where it reigns. When it operates, my will wants to enclose everything and give everything, because it does not know how to do incomplete acts, but complete, and with the fullness of all goods. But who can tell you, my daughter, what happens in that overwhelming of heaven and earth, in that operating act of my volition in the creature? That it moves everyone, that each one wanting his place in that act, such marvels happen, such unheard of prodigies, such moving scenes, that the heavens are surprised and remain ecstatic before the operating power of my will. But where? In the little circle of the creature. And they remain anxious to be overwhelmed again in the operating act of my will in her. Oh, how they long for it! They feel themselves more embellished, and they experience the beautiful happiness of the conquering act of my will in the creature, that which is lacking to them in heaven, because up there are no conquests, nor can they acquire them, and enough, and no more, is placed on what they have done on earth. But this is still not everything. One additional act that she does in my will is an incorporating of God in the creature, and the creature in God. It is an installation in each other, and the life of the one flows in the other, almost like blood in the veins. It is the fusion of the human heartbeat in the eternal heartbeat, and she feels in herself as life, the love, the sanctity, the life of her Creator. And the Eternal One feels flow in himself the little love of the creature, who living in him forms one single love and one single will. Every breath, heartbeat, and motion are wounds, arrows, darts of love that she gives to he who has created her. And oh, the whole of heaven remains as amazed that they look at God and find the creature fused in him, who loves with his love and with conquering love. They look at the creature on earth, and they find their Creator, who, while he has his throne in her, lives together with her. These are the greatest excesses of our love toward she whom we love so much. When we find the creature who lends herself and denies us nothing, we do not look at her littleness, but we look rather to what we know and can do, because we can do everything. And making a display of our love and of all our divine being, we invest the creature and let ourselves be invested, and we do great things worthy of us, but with such magnanimity that everyone remains surprised and amazed. It is enough to tell you that every additional act that she does in my will, as if we were to have need of the creature, we give so much that we increase greater bonds of union, of love, on both parts, and we arrive at giving new rights to her over our divine being, and to us over her. So great is this operating act of our fiat in her, that the centuries are not enough to say what happens in her. Neither the angels nor the saints can tell all the good that it contains. Only your Jesus can tell you all the good that is formed in this act, because I, being the operator, I know how to say what I do, and the great value that I placed within there. Therefore be attentive. Greater contentment, love, and glory you cannot give me than lending me your little acts, your little love, in order to let my will descend into them, so as to let my will operate. Its love is so much that it feels the need of having its field of action in the little acts of the creature. February 26, 1938, Volume 35. How God recognizes himself in the one who tries to recognize God in his works. Happiness that God receives from the love of the creature. the place that man has in the creation and in the very divinity. How the divinity forms the members of one who lives in the divine will. I am under the empire of the divine volition that loves and sighs for desire of being recognized in all its works. It seems that it takes the little creature by the hand, and carrying her in flight, points out to her all that it did, how much it loved her in each created thing, and how, by right, it wants to be loved in return. To love without receiving love in return is its greatest pain. I remained surprised, and my always adorable Jesus, visiting my little soul, all goodness told me, "My blessed daughter, to love and to be loved is the greatest refreshment for our love. The happiness of the earth unites to the happiness of heaven, and as they kiss each other, we feel that the earth too delights us, bringing us the love of the creature who recognizes us and loves us. She brings us the most beautiful joys and the greatest happiness, more so since the joys of heaven are ours, and nobody can take them away from us. But those that we receive through the love of the creature are new for us, and form our new conquests. And then, being recognized in our works, the creature flies up to recognize the one who created her. To be recognized is for us the greatest glory, the most intense love we may receive. By being recognized, we form our army, the divine militia, our people, from which we demand nothing other than the tribute of being loved. We put all our works at their disposal to serve them, abounding with all that may make them happy. If they do not recognize us, we remain like the god, with no army and with no people. How painful it is to give to daylight so many creatures, and to remain without an army and without people. Now, continue to listen. As soon as the creature recognizes us in the created things and loves, she seals in them a note of love and happiness for her Creator. And as she goes up to recognize her Creator, she recognizes us, and we recognize our divine being in her. If you knew what it means to recognize each other. Our love, being loved, gives us peace and loves more intensively the one who loves it, reaching such excess that, in order to recognize itself in the creature, it creates itself. But to do what? To recognize itself in her and to be loved. How beautiful it is when we recognize ourselves in the creature. She becomes for us our throne, our divine chamber, our heaven. The seas of our love inundate her. Her little acts form waves of love that love us, glorify us, and bless us. She recognizes us in ourselves. She recognizes us within herself. She recognizes us in all created things. And we recognize her in all our works, in the sky, in the sun, in the wind, in everything. Our love, united to our Fiat, brings her everywhere, and we place her in order inside all our works. After this, my mind continued to swim in the sea of the divine volition. My God, how many surprises, how many wonders! And my sweet Jesus, visiting my little soul, all inundated within his flames of love, told me, "Blessed daughter of my will, my love gives me no peace if it doesn't make me say new surprises about my divine Fiat. It wants to make you know the sublimity and nobility of the place it occupies for those who live in the divine volition, both in creation and within our divine being. You must know that the creature who lives in our divine will occupies the first place in the creation. All created things feel so connected together and united to her that they become her inseparable members. Therefore, the sun is her member. The expanse of heaven, the wind, and the air that all breathe are her members. All created things feel happy, honored to be the members of this fortunate creature, and some become her heart, some her hand, some her feet, some her eyes, some her breath. In some, there's no created thing that does not have its distinct place and does not exercise the office of being her member. Her soul, as the head, keeps her members in order and receives from God all the love, the sanctity, the glory, and all the goods that the created things contain. More so, since all created things are our members as well. Therefore, for the creature who lives in our will, her members are ours and our members are hers. They keep our supreme being in communication with the creature, and we become for her more than blood that circulates in the veins of her soul, the continuous heartbeat of love as we palpitate in her heart, the divine breathing as we breathe in her soul. And loving this creature with excessive love, we put into circulation her little love and her acts inside our divine being. We are jealous of her heartbeat and of her breath, so we enclose them inside of ours. Nothing comes out of her that does not remain locked within ourselves, to repay her with our love and to hear her delightful and sweet refrain, I love you, I love you, I love you. So in one who lives in our will, we see the continuous chain that never breaks, and our love has its ledge on which to lean, to be able to say incessantly, I love you, I love you, I love you. When our love does not find the love of the creature, it remains suspended and shouts in pain, as if it wanted to deafen the creature, telling her, why don't you love me? Not loving us is the most cruel wound for us. But this is not all. If our love doesn't reach excess, it is not satisfied. Do you want to know why we made of the creation many members that had to serve as our members as well as members of the creature? We placed in each created thing our gifts, our sanctity, and our love, as the bearers of what we wanted to give to her, and as deliverers of what she would do for us. All created things are crammed with and depository of all that we wanted to give her. Heaven, with its variety of stars, symbolizes the many of our new and distinct acts that we wanted to give her. The sun symbolizes our eternal light, with which we want to inundate her, and the heat and its effects represent our love that almost wants to drown her, to make her feel how much we love her, while its effects are the various beauties with which we wanted to invest her. In every blow of the wind we placed our kisses and our loving caresses, and in its impetuous waves our ruling love, to sweep her into our love with our squeezes and hugs, so as to render her inseparable from us. In sum, each created thing possesses our gifts to be given to the creature. But who takes them? Only those who love in our will. I can say that all created things are filled with our gifts, but they cannot give them. They cannot be their bearers, because they do not find one who lives in our divine Fiat, which has the virtue and the power of putting her in communication with all our works, more than her own members, and with her very Creator, more than her own life. How many unheard of prodigies will we not deliver from our divine womb for those who will let our will reign? Our works will sing triumphs and victories, and, hands full, We will abound in giving the gifts and the goods of their Creator that they possess. All will be happy, those who give and those who receive. Therefore be attentive and do not care about anything other than living in my will, because I have much to give you, and you much to receive. I remained surprised in hearing this, and I said to myself, is it really possible? What he just said? It seems incredible. And my sweet Jesus added, my daughter, don't be surprised. You must know that all that we did had to serve the creature who was to possess my divine will as life. It was necessary to our decorum, wisdom, power, and to our majesty. Now, when the creature subtracted herself from our will, justice demanded that we withdraw from her all that had to serve as befitting to our supreme majesty, and the creature remained like the head without its members. Poor head with no members, what good could it ever do? It is true that the head has the supremacy over the members, but without members, the head can do nothing. It has no life and no works. Now, since my will wants to go back into the creature, my love wants, demands the restitution of the members. Not only this, but also the very life of the one who has created them. Our reigning will place all its works in force, and it will give back to the creature all that she lost by doing her own human will, which devastates all goods, breaks all the communications with our works and with its very Creator, and becomes like a dislocated bone that loses communication with all its members. All it gives is pain. End of February 26th. Fiat.